and today is going to be the video that everyone's been requesting, how to build CLEAF. If you like my videos and like all my content, hit the sub button, hit the like button, hit that bell dingy dingy thing so you know when I post a video. Let's go, baby. Tip of the day, if you didn't know already, all of your weapons that you have equipped but not in your hand account for stats on your summoner. As you can see here in this like crazy fire staff with 42.5% attack. At the bottom it says for unused weapons 25% of the original effect is added to the power. I'm going to show you in this frost staff for example. This staff has 13.3% accuracy. 25% of that is roughly like 3.3%. If you see my accuracy right now, it's 82.7. If I equip that, my accuracy goes up to 86%. This is with the wind staff attached. If I equip the frost staff, then my stats completely change. Again, look at crit rate. I have 93.7%. I don't have any crit rate on this staff. I'm going to unequip it. Crit rate does not change. I have another frost staff with 8% crit rate. 25% of that is 2. So my crit rate should go up to 95.7 once I equip this staff, and it does. The more you know. Okay, our boy CLEAF. He is the PvP king. He's also great in PvE too. He can cheese a lot of stuff. He's somewhat reliant on other monsters, but not as much as Kina, and I'm going to tell you how to build him in this video. There are 2 different ways to build CLEAF. There is a tank build, but there's also a damage build. The main things to go over with CLEAF, number 1, any element you do, the rotation is the same. You start off with the 3rd skill, you then go to the 1st skill, and then you go to the 2nd skill. Now, whatever element you bring is up to you. You really want that stronger element in dungeons, but I'm going to go over what they specialize in. Dark Element is the true provoking tank. He's got a provoke on his 3rd skill, which cannot be resisted by the highest attack enemy. Also applies reflect damage on himself, and all allies get a damage taken down buff. He mitigates a ton of damage with his damage taken down debuff, and also he has a crit rate down debuff as well. If he hits someone that is provoked to him, he gets a heal over time, and because the rotation is 3rd skill, 1st skill, 2nd skill, you should have a crit rate down debuff on the enemy, which makes him get endure on himself. His ultimate applies another endure and also another provoke. Every ultimate of all the other elements do not provoke. That's why Dark is the best damage mitigator for your monsters. Every 3rd skill does provoke, just so you're aware. Light is your invulnerable tank. Really good with monsters that have cooldown lowering skills, especially because all of these skills have a super low cooldown. If you add in like a Konamiya and like a Rakuni or whatever, you can highly benefit from low cooldown skills. CLEAF has the lowest cooldowns of any summoner. I mean, in my opinion, CLEAF needs a little rebalance, but hey, his 3rd skill applies invincibility to himself and the highest attack ally. 1st skill applies a blind. Blind makes the enemies not hit basic attacks. Then his 2nd skill, if the enemy has a blind, also applies a silence. So you got blind not hitting basic attacks, silence not able to use skills, and being invulnerable a lot. Really good combos. Not to mention his ultimate does stun. Wind Element is like your solo build. It's got a defense buff to yourself and all allies, has self-sustain as a heal and also has a shield, also has electric shock, and his damage on his 2nd skill ignores 50% of the defense of the enemy. The ultimate gives a huge level 7 defense buff to a really good solo unit, especially if you go that DPS build. Water Element, in my opinion, is probably the weakest of the all 5 elements for CLEAF. However, it's situationally good. 1, when you need a fire element advantage, obviously. 2, if you're in a situation where you need a debuffer for basic attacks. If there's an enemy that does a lot of fast damage and basic attack damage, then water is your element. He applies attack down on the 3rd skill, also applies attack speed down whenever the enemy has an attack down. And if the enemy has an attack down, his 2nd skill will attack twice, lowering the accuracy. His ultimate then applies a level 5 attack down and attack speed down. You really should pay attention to all these damage modifiers too. It's insane for a tank. He really does need a balance. I don't care what anybody says. Last but not least, the fire element. Fire is the healer counter. Really works well with team monsters that have crowd control. However, he does bring crowd control in the fire element. He has a heal over time for himself, can apply an unrecoverable to block enemy healing, also a bleed, which is huge. First skill has HP destruction, which is really good against healers as well. Applies the stun, that's where the crowd control comes in. And if the enemy has a crowd control, aka stun, he does a second attack on his second skill, applying more damage plus unrecoverable again. The crowd control doesn't have to be stun, it can be any crowd control. And there's a lot of different crowd controls. Provoke, freeze, blind, silence, stun, sleep, fear, root, etc., etc. And his ultimate also applies unrecoverable and resistance down. Some elements are better for the tank build and some elements are better for the damage build. As you can see, like his third skill on dark is 30 seconds, but if you look at other ones, third skill on light is 20, on water it's 15. Same goes for the second skill. They all have different cooldowns, like one's 15, the other one's 10. So obviously when you're going into a dungeon, you want that element advantage. But if you're thinking PvP, there's better elements to go with if you're the damage build. Let's talk about CLEAF staffs real quick for the tank build and the damage build. Just like ruining monsters, everything comes down to your substats. So I'm not going to really tell you where to prioritize, like for your bracelet, necklace, and ring, because it truly depends on what substats you get. However, overall, the big picture, it's all about the overall stats. That's why anytime I talk about a support or a tank, I don't tell you what rune sets, I don't talk about where to put defense in slot 2 or whatever, because anything can be manipulated with substats. For the tank build, you definitely want to prioritize as a main stat defense. Then prioritize evasion, HP, and accuracy. Now for what everybody wants is the DPS build for CLEAF. There's actually two different ways you can build the damage build. If you want CLEAF to be somewhat tanky but do a lot of damage, you want to prioritize as a main stat defense. Secondary stat is attack. Third is crit rate to at least 90% or close to it. Then go into crit damage. If you can get some accuracy in there, make sure to do that as well. You need those debuffs to land so that your second skill can proc again. Now, if you want a really squishy frontline tank and you want to do a lot of damage as CLEAF, then your main stat to prioritize is attack. The reason being is because his ultimate only is based off of attack percent. For wind, his second skill, if you proc the link skill, it's only off of attack as well. Plus the modifiers for the attack percent is really good. After you prioritize attack, then you can look into getting defense, crit rate again to at least around 90%, and then crit damage. And again, if you can get some accuracy, go ahead and do that. Alright, skills. Two different builds for skills, obviously. Again, one tank, one damage dealer. For the tank and damage build for utility section, it's these three skills anytime. It doesn't matter what build you build. Mental discipline, max it out. Concentration, max it out. And luck, max it out. And again, these are skills to prioritize. Once you get skill books and you get a ton of them, like maybe 2,000 or something like that, you'll be able to max all the skills out. I'm just telling you which skills to prioritize first. Once you get those skills in utility section, then we're talking about the passive section. For the tank build, you definitely want to prioritize this first skill. Mitigates a lot of damage and gets you mana regeneration at a chance. Then max out enhanced shield, it's the 5th skill. Then the 6th skill, Blessing Keeper. The 7th skill, Tenacity Keeper. And the 8th skill, Confrontation. And as you can see, 1 point is in every single other skill. Because as you can see, just 1 point putting skills into these talents gives your monsters 10% defense, 10% resistance, level 1 reflect damage, and level 1 crit res up. It's literally only 1 skill point. So for using 4 skill points, it's worth it just to put 1 in each. Once you prioritize utility and passive skills like that, then go into the active skills. And for active skills as a tank, just go for the third skill, the second skill, and the ultimate. Then you can start putting points into the first skill when those other ones are done, and then the basic last. Now for the damage build. The damage build for CLEAF, like utility, as I said, make sure to get these 3 for sure. Then in the passive section, the only skills to put points in is the first one, Protection Shield, the 5th one, Enhanced Shield, the 7th one, Tenacity Keeper. This will help you cheese a lot of things in the damage build because you're obviously a little bit more squishier. And then in the 8th skill, Confrontation. You don't need to max out Blessing Keeper in this build. You can put 1 point into it. It will help a little bit. But what you really want to focus on is the active skills for CLEAF. CLEAF has a ton of burst as a damage build. He's obviously a lot harder to build stats wise for crit rate, crit damage, etc. But he can really put out some amazing bursts. You can literally probably 3 or 4 shot an Orbia if she doesn't have any good support. But if you're going the damage route, make sure to prioritize the 3rd skill, then the 2nd skill, then the 1st skill, then go into the ultimate once you're done those, then the basic attack is last. The monsters you run with CLEAF really just depends on you. I would always run a damage dealer with him, but you don't necessarily need to, especially in PvP. The amount of damage he can do, you can just bring full supports and just never die and just do a ton of damage. And obviously, like every summoner, you need to know what element does what buffs or debuffs are given out, so that you can make your team comp appropriate to the situation at hand. That's it for today's video. I hope this helps you build CLEAF for however you want to build him. Eventually, I'm going to have a tank build and a damage build, but unless he gets some kind of rework, then I'm probably going to prioritize damage myself. So I think survivability alone, he can just do as much damage as he can and just survive outright. Yeah, there's strips and all that block beneficial effects and all that crap, right? I understand counters. Endure and invincibility is not the only reason he needs a rework. It's the low cooldowns, the damage modifiers, the length of some of the buffs. It's a lot, but I'll take him as he is right now. That's why I'm building him. If you like my videos and like my content, sub, like, ding, ding, bell. I'll see you in the next one. Peace!